So, good morning everyone, and thank you in advance for your attention over the next 15 minutes. I'll try and keep it to 15 minutes, otherwise I'll very quickly get in trouble. We are ZoneFox, and today I've been asked to talk about the perimeter within the modern business, and more importantly, whether it actually still exists. So some background first. ZoneFox was started out of Napier University in Edinburgh back in 2011. We shipped our first product to customers in 2013. And we've won multiple awards since, which we're of course very proud of. Now, our growth curve during that time has been pretty incredible, and we truly see ourselves as exiting the startup phase and moving towards into the scale-up phase now. Our initial investment went into R&D, but we're now using that investment to market and sell ZoneFox to customers globally. We initially started in the UK, but we have some fantastic clients in the US. We're going to be using that experience to grow and scale within other markets in early 2019. So who are we? ZoneFox is an award-winning market leader in UEBA, User Behavior Analytics, the current buzzword of the time, providing critical insights around data flow that you need to secure against the insider threat, which is the core of what ZoneFox does. Below, we have a number of publicly available reference clients that we work with. As you can see, there are quite a few verticals covered here, many sectors there, but these are all companies with a very common set of challenges, namely protecting their intellectual property, their brand and reputation, which these days is a difficult thing to do, as anything that's a negative slant gets very public very quickly. Things like compliance and even more. So we've got lots of recognizable names here. We've got the likes of Rockstar North. If you're not familiar with them, you're probably familiar with the Grand Theft Auto series, or at least I am. Pince & Masons, who are a very well-known UK-based international law firm, and some very well-known retail clients, such as Pret A Manger and the Central England Cooperative Group. So on to the topic itself. This is what IT security has looked like for the last 20, 25 years. It's a traditional castle and moat model. Now we have some very valid, very necessary technologies here. To name a few: intrusion detection, firewalls, whitelisting, that sort of thing. Next-gen AV, that's very big right now. A lot of people talking about that. But simply put, it's mainly exterior security wrapped around everything that you want to keep safe. With a secured entry in and out. It's not an ineffective approach by any means. There's a reason why we've been doing this for so long. It works to a degree. But our focus on keeping the bad actors out has, over the last 2 decades, has really taken us away from looking, and I mean really looking, at the threats that already exist within the castle, and also who has keys to the drawbridge. It's no longer about blocking everything. It's about getting an understanding of what's going on inside your business. In short, it's time to do something different. This is an old slide. Everyone has seen the definition of insanity, probably time and time again. But I think it sums up the secure perimeter approach quite well. You can build up your layered security, adding more and more layers until you have a layered wedding cake of a perimeter, but you're still going to miss the key threats that are already inside. So why is this such a risk in business today? Well, home working is becoming more and more common for a proportion of the week. In fact, recently some of the largest financial institutions have started to look at downsizing their real estate to take account of this. And the head of estates and property at a large financial institution recently told us that if all of their employees turned up to work on the same morning, they'd have a very real problem. And very recently I spoke to 2 very similarly sized organizations who say the exact same thing. And actually those 2 organizations have started to enforce work from home days for their employees, because it's just, there's too many of them for their real estate. The leader of the TUC stated only last week that with the introduction of AI technologies, that our jobs are easier to do. Speak for yourself, perhaps, and that a 4-day working week is a reality in the UK very soon. Now, I know that's a very exciting prospect, but that's not my point. I'm just as excited about that as you are. But it highlights a very real and growing risk, and this is one that it's already prevalent across many organizations, and it's only going to grow. So what is insider threat? Well, it's true to say that people are our biggest asset. We're told this all the time. We know this to be true. But people also make mistakes. And people don't always act in the way that we expect them to. So because of that, they're also probably our greatest weakness when it comes to security. Now, at ZoneFox, we see this all the time. And there are a few common themes of insider threat that can be identified. I'll go through some of them now, but we also have leaflets which go through many more, so please do visit the stand afterwards. So first up, we have Quentin Quentin. Now there comes a time in everyone's career where they decide a change is necessary, as we all know. If they can't change positions within their organization, they often leave for pastures new. Now, everyone wants to be able to provide value whenever they move to a new role. They want to be able to hit the ground running. But the way that they do this varies from person to person. Now, in the case of Quentin Quentin, he decided to take customer data with him. So be mindful whenever someone is exiting your company, particularly for anyone who has things like customer data, intellectual property, technical data, commercial documents, that sort of thing. Next up, we have Disgruntled Dave. This is probably a very relatable one for a few people. I'm sure we possibly have a few Disgruntled Daves in the audience. Please don't raise your hand, your boss is watching. Dave was a bright employee who was promoted quite quickly. He thought he was helping the company by bringing to light a vulnerability in their software. But since there was no real-world exploit, it got passed on. The management team decided to accept that risk and just push forward all the same. Dave tried to sway public opinion, but his advice wasn't heeded. He was ignored. This pushed him over the edge, which caused him to resort to damaging the next software release of said company to prove a point. Now, a point to note, some of the reasons that employees become disgruntled, but remember, these are from the employee's perspective. You won't always necessarily know how everyone's feeling in your business. And you could well have a few disgruntled Daves who don't voice their opinions and could be pushed over the edge and might do something a little bit like Disgruntled Dave did. And you wouldn't know, you wouldn't see it coming. Next up, we have Sandra the Spy. Now, Sandra the Spy was forced into being a bad actor. Sandra the Spy's situation is not unique. Many employees are in positions where they don't make enough money. This isn't necessarily an opinion. It's often as a result of life choices. Sometimes parents need to care for their kids, but don't feel they make enough money to do so. Sometimes couples want to get married or put a down payment on a house, but money is perpetually tight. On occasion, a competing entity with less morals than your own may take advantage of this, presenting an offer that the potential spy can't or feels that they can't turn down, which turns them to that competing entity's side. Mind you, some of them are planted very early on. They aren't always turned. They can be planted from day one, awaiting further instruction from a nation state or, again, a competing entity. Now, fortunately, corporate espionage is not a ubiquitous threat to all organizations in all lines of business, but it's something to be particularly mindful if your business runs around its intellectual property. Last but not least, we have Careless Caroline. Now, Careless Caroline is a project manager who works at 100 miles an hour under huge pressure, trying to please absolutely everyone. Now, a very important point to note here, unlike the other ones that we looked at today, Careless Caroline is not a malicious actor whatsoever. There's no motivation to steal, destroy, or otherwise harm her organization's data. Unfortunately, Careless Caroline is all too common a character in today's organization, whether it's leaving a workstation unlocked, leaving passwords on sticky notes. Can we all agree today, the future of cyber, that leaving passwords on sticky notes is a bad thing? Clicking malicious links without understanding who sent them or why, or even tailgating through keycard areas of an office. A few technical controls can actually help stem this tide. If you want to help someone like this to be more careful in their day-to-day dealings, then education and monitoring is key. So, here's your team. Your team is the best team in the world. They're all trustworthy, all completely trustworthy, and you have no need to doubt any of them. Until they come to leave you to join your biggest competitor. Still feel so confident about their trustworthiness. What projects have they been working on? What data did they have access to? Do you think that they could have stolen anything over the last few months? Maybe this is a decision that's come down the line for some time. And how do you know? Now, we recently worked with a Formula One team who was concerned that some of their key designs were at risk of theft from within. Now, Formula One, I'm sure you all watch it, but it's a sport where this kind of activity is rife. It's a technically driven, expensive, competitive sport. Needless to say, they were very right to be concerned. After working with them for a short period of time, we discovered that an employee who was preparing to leave had managed to gain access to the design files on the team's car for that year. And guess what they did next? No prizes for guessing. They transferred the lot onto removable media and took it to a competitor team. So we find this same story replicated far too often, which is why we say it's time to rethink the perimeter. So if we look at the relevance to the enterprise, this is some research that I did the other week. And if you look on the right-hand side, we have a number of very well-known enterprise organizations. And on the left, some corresponding job titles. I think it's pretty fair to say that these job titles did not exist 3 years ago. I would have been looking at these 5 years ago and seeing GDPR manager, which I promise is the only time I mention GDPR in this presentation, or hopefully today. And here we have some further emphasis by some recent publications. Again, these are all very well known. You've probably all seen these in the news. The likes of Tesla, their insider their insider breach. We've got in the top right, we have a particular telecoms giant whose name I can't mention, but that's probably something that we remember. And then Morrison's, and Morrison's wasn't even a recent one. That was one that everyone paid attention to, but it was like 2014 now. And we're now seeing this on an almost weekly basis. So it is definitely time to take a look at what we're doing with regards to insider threat. So to conclude, if there is a perimeter, it's people, it's employees, it's partners, it's our supply chain. BA was only the other week. They discovered where their perimeter really is. It's the same place as Ticketmaster's. And now BA is potentially facing a £500 million class action lawsuit. These are not small names that I've spoken about today. So is there really a perimeter? Thank you so much for listening. I hope this has provoked an interesting thought or two, and I look forward to hopefully speaking to some of you throughout today.
Jonny, thank you very much indeed. Excellent. Excellent.